All right, let's talk about this. So, how many of you here have found Ellensburg Blues? Okay. Well, yours are yet to be seen. Yes, you did. It does. So if you're out wandering around looking for rocks, would you guys keep one of these? Is this something? Yeah? You'd take one?
Sorry, I have really bad vision.
That's all right. Would you keep one of these? Good move, sell it. Jim, you wouldn't keep one of these, would you?
I'd take them all.
Of course you would, because you're greedy.
Yeah, I am.
Greedy little leprechaun. So, the interesting thing about these of course have been cleaned just a little bit, but this of course is what they look like when they're cleaned a lot. So this is the other side of those rocks. So, when you're out looking, when you're out hunting for Ellensburg Blues, don't look for blue. Look for agate. So look for any shape agate that you can find. Okay, so these are seam agate pieces, all right, and you can see these got worn down a little bit, and so there's a little bit of color showing, and of course the photo when it got printed, it printed with a little bit more color as well. But when I first looked at these, they had no blue color showing at all. Okay, but I recognized them as a seam agate, and so then I took them to the wheel and ground off the other side, and you see what got exposed. So these are actually Ellensburg Blues. But if I'd been... No, actually I didn't do a PowerPoint for it, so... So if I hadn't taken these stones and if I hadn't ground them off, there'd be, you know, 3 more Ellensburg Blues lying around for somebody else to find, probably Terry. Yeah, hi Terry. So first off, first and foremost, the first piece of advice I have for people who are looking, don't look for blue, look for agate, okay? And then you can worry about the color later. Yes?
Me and my grandpa were just like trying to find some agates one day, and turns out 3 of them were agates. We just thought they were agates.
Just following your advice.
So yeah, you got agates, and then they turned into wonderful blue things. I love to hear that. So I actually found an agate in the back of my truck that's been running around in there for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and it's a really nice blue. So it was just dirty when I put it there, and now it's clean. So once you've got your agates and you clean them off and you think that you've got one that's blue, so you can look at them, and a lot of times basically what happens is if they got something dark on the outside, some matrix or dirt, it'll cast shadow onto the inside of that agate and it'll make that agate look blue. Okay, so right here, now this is a nodule, and so Ellensburg Blues don't grow as nodules, they form as seam agate. Okay, this is a nodule, but the same principle applies. You can see one of these is blue and one of these is not, but they're both 2 halves of the same nodule. Okay, these, all I did was cut it in half, but the white clear one, I removed the outer matrix from it. Okay, so you don't have the outer surface casting shadow on the inside of it, making it look blue. All right, so you get a lot of people that say, well, yeah, I found the blue one. Well, you take it home and wash it, or you take it home and clean the outer edges, and it's not blue at all. So I actually had I had several of these, and one of them I had a GIA certified jeweler tell me it was an Ellensburg Blue, but they were really, really wrong. So color, like I said, look for agate. Nodules, 99 times out of 100, they're not going to be Ellensburg Blue, and then the only time that they are is if they were hollow and along the fracture zone where the Ellensburg Blue fluid filled in the nodule as it was going by. Okay, I know of 5 of them. I have 2. So the other thing, the exterior of Ellensburg Blues, now here's a nice slab cut. Now the color is a little bit brighter than real life because of the photo printing process. Okay, but if you'll see on this Ellensburg Blue, you'll see that there's the dark brown, almost black color on the base of that. That's goethite, which is a type of iron. Okay, and so most Ellensburg Blues will have some type of goethite with them, whether it's inclusions that are in it or on the outer edges. You'll get big blobs of this iron and goethite. So the other thing is, on this one, you can see that there's some tan. Some of that is rust-stained quartz or moganite. Moganite is the same almost exactly as quartz. It's the same silicon dioxide. It just forms slightly differently, so they reclassified it as its own name. But some of that might also be rhyolite, because Ellensburg Blues form in rhyolite. So there are some videos online where they say that Ellensburg Blues formed in basalt, but that's not the case. Agates form in basalt, and sometimes blue agates will form in basalt, but they're generally going to be a nodule, and that's formed by seepwater dribbling down and filling up these different gas nodules, gas bubbles, and then solidifying with the silicon dioxide into an agate. So you will get blue nodules, and 15 years ago or so, those would have been called an Ellensburg Blue. But more recently, when they started doing their testing on it to see what the difference between an Ellensburg Blue and everything else was, they found that it had higher zirconium, and that comes from the rhyolite that it formed in. So the fluid is magmatic, hot magmatic fluid. It's been superheated by molten lava and forced up into these fractures, and as it's coming up, it dissolves some of the surrounding rhyolite, and there's zirconium in the rhyolite, and now it dissolves it, and now it's in that fluid, and when the fluid cools, it cools into Ellensburg Blue. Okay, and so you can see too on this one, it's got a crystal top, and that formed after the Ellensburg Blue was deposited. That crystal top is just quartz, okay, that druzy. And so outer layers, and we've got some examples on the table over here that if you want to see later with the rhyolite, so you can see that the rhyolite is kind of a tan. It's kind of a fine-grained rock. The stuff there is a little fine-grained. It's usually kind of coarser as well. So, but they'll have the rhyolite, kind of a tannish to reddish color. They'll have the goethite, which is the rust brown and black. And then it'll have moganite, which is the white, and sometimes little white moganite crystals up in the blue as well. Okay, so, and moganite, like I said, the thing about moganite is actually just a type of quartz that formed differently. So here's a good picture as well. So you see the different layers, and now people long have said that Ellensburg Blues don't have lacing or fortification lines in them. Well, they do. It's just that jewelers traditionally would never cut it so you could see those. So this stone right here is a solid blue, whereas this stone right here has some shape and everything in it. Well, some jewelers, they don't like having any kind of fortification line showing. So, but you'll also see that top stone, the very center of it, it's got gray agate, and then it's got quartz in the middle of that. Okay, so you got the bluer outer, and then additional fluid that came in was just silicon dioxide, so it's just plain quartz. So if you were to cut that, if you were to take the blue off both sides, and you had this nice clear gray cabochon from the center, would you still call it an Ellensburg Blue? You know? You could say it came from an Ellensburg Blue and it came from the vein, but if it was clear, you could tell me it's an Ellensburg Blue all you want, and I'll still tell you to get lost. So it's not worth anything. So for searching for them, you need to understand that sometimes you'll have agate or gray agate facing you. That's what you'll see, and it could have blue underneath it. The other thing is too, if you were to cut them and make your own cabochons or jewelry out of it, you don't want to cut the blue off. You don't want to grind it off either, because some people have done that. You know, you grind it just a little too far, you grind right through the blue layer, because sometimes the layers are even thinner, the blue layers. Or there's multiple blue layers and interlaced with clear layers. So the idea that they don't have the lacing or the fortification lines is wrong. They do form with them. It's just traditionally you never saw that in a finished product. So here's another, this is a pretty good shot as well. So these are 3 pieces of Ellensburg Blue, and you can see they've got multiple layers in them. And some of the layers are light blue, and some of them are kind of a medium blue. Okay, but they're blue. The one in the center, the top layer of it is a clear layer. It's got quartz as well. So if you were to cut them and work them, you would want to grind the quartz layer away. You wouldn't want to go sideways into it and have the stripe showing. I mean, you could if you wanted, but it's better that you would grind away the clear part so you have the blue left. So got to be careful. But all of these are Ellensburg Blue. They just the color differentiation. It changed going through the veins every foot or two. You could have a different shade of blue. So, and that's why, there's lots of people that say that if it's not a dark blue, it's not an Ellensburg Blue, or if it's not a light blue, it's not an Ellensburg Blue. Well, they all came from the same place, and they all have the same chemical composition, and they're all one shade of blue or another. So, as far as I'm concerned, they're blues. So, but speaking of that, some of you have seen this picture. Now, would you say all of these are blues? I mean, some of them are purple. So, and you put this picture up on Facebook, and the first thing everyone says is, Holly Blue, Holly Blue. Okay, but these are all Ellensburg Blues. Some of them are purple. They all came from the Carlson claim. They all came from the same vein, but they never sold them because they were too purple to be a blue. Now, I think they're fantastic, and I'd love to have them all. So, but these do test out as proper Ellensburg Blues. It's just that they're not the proper color. So, I know lots of people that if they see one of these available and they trust the source, then they want it. They want it now. So, it's a slightly rarer color. You don't find hardly any of these. Have you ever found any, Terry, that you thought were fairly purple or a little violet maybe? Little bit of purple to it there. Oh yeah, this is a really nice darker one, and when it clears up and it's a botryoidal. Her address is 657 Sycamore Lane.
That's not sort of lavender?
I see a little bit of a little lavender, but more of a darker royal blue even. So here's another interesting. I like this picture. So here's 3 Ellensburg Blues that I worked, and each one of them obviously is a different color. And so 2 of them I know exactly where they came from. The third one I know who found it and where they said they found it, and I believe them. So, but generally if you're buying it for someone, you don't always know where it came from, and so you don't always know if there's any provenance as to whether it really is an Ellensburg Blue or not. There used to be. Rumor has it that there used to be a shop that would order their Ellensburg Blues from Mexico. And if it's blue and sold in Ellensburg, then it's an Ellensburg Blue. So if we were to test all these different things that were made, in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, how many of them are actually going to come back as being an Ellensburg Blue, and how many of them are going to come back as just being a blue agate? So that's frustrating. It's frustrating for me. I don't buy them. I find them myself, and I'm not bad at it. I can find them, but I also have gotten some from the Carlson jewelry store. They've got, and there's no reason why they would ever lie. They own the claims for 40 years, so they were the only ones that ever have a claim at the time. And so, but anyway, so the point of this is that Ellensburg Blues come in a lot of different colors, and you can't just look at it and say that's a blue or that's not a blue. If you are serious maybe in purchasing or buying a large amount or whatever the case is, you want to try to also see if you can prove other ways that it's a blue. So one of the ways that I recommend for people is to buy stones that still have the matrix on them. So they still have some rhyolite, they have some goethite, mogonite, and that's not always possible. But if you can, you buy stones that have the matrix. Now I've had people say, well, you can't see the color. What if it's a fake blue because it still has the matrix on it, right? So this is a nodule. Like I said, it was never destined to be an Ellensburg Blue. But if you presented me two halves of nodule and you said they were Ellensburg Blues and you didn't want to clean them up anymore, I'd say, well, clean up one of them at least. And then if this is what you presented to me, of course I wouldn't buy either of them. Jim, you'd probably buy this blue one. But
I've done a few of those blues up.
I know.
Then when I clean them up, they turn gray.
They turn gray. So, but if you can, I've got some rocks over, some Ellensburg Blues over there in my case where half of the matrix has been ground off and half of it's still left on. So you have a piece of blue agate that's bare, and then you have it in matrix still. So you can actually look at the matrix and you can look at the color. So it's the same stone. I haven't cut it. I just cleaned it. So if you're looking to buy rough, you might ask them, well, can you grind off the matrix on one part and leave it on the other part so I can see the matrix and see the color at the same time? So that's one way of testing it. There's of course the way of testing it with the X-ray, XRF, where it shoots X-ray. Let's say it in very layman terms, X-ray lasers go through the stone and bounce back, and they bring molecules of the rock itself with them, and then it analyzes the molecules that are in this X-ray beam, and it'll tell you what the content, what the percentage is. Well, Ellensburg Blues have the same chemical makeup as other blue agates, except that they have an elevated level of zirconium, which comes from the rhyolite. Okay, so when that hot rhyolite's coming up through the fractures, it's dissolving and then it's mixing in when the hot fluid's coming up through the fractures in the rhyolite, it dissolves, mixes in, and then when the liquid cools, you've got the Ellensburg Blue with some of that zirconium in it. So you can have an XRF test on it. The Central Washington University will do testing for that. They've slowed down a little bit, my understanding, but they still have the machine and they're still able to do the testing. I'm not going to have my things tested because I know where they came from, and if I sell it, people are going to have to believe me or not, and I know that's a tough one. Carlson's are certainly not going to test theirs. They contributed 80 some odd stones to be tested to their database, and all other Ellensburg Blues are being based off of that. So that's your basis for identification. So there's another way. That you can do a hardness test. A lot of people say Ellensburg Blues are harder than 8 on the Mohs scale. They go up to 8.5. Well, I've never found one that's that hard, and I've tested a lot of them. They test pretty much the same as other quartz, right around 7. Maybe stretching a little higher because Ellensburg Blues have the impurities in them, so maybe stretching up to maybe a 7.5. I've never found anything that's harder than an 8, even though people have said that there's Ellensburg Blues that are harder. So when people tell you can test it for hardness, that's not a consistent test. That's not one that I would trust personally. So, and I have a hardness tester. I've always got it with me, and so if I find something, I can test it. If I'm not even sure if it's an agate, all agate's going to be 7, right around 7, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lesser. But if I'm not even sure, I can pull this out and test it. You know, your pocket knife, if you got a pocket knife, it's at a 5, and so you can test it. An agate and quartz should always scratch your pocket knife. If you try to scratch your pocket knife and it doesn't scratch, then it's not as hard as you thought it was, and it's not going to be agate or quartz. It's definitely not a diamond. So, but I carry a hardness tester. You can get these. It tests for the Mohs, M-O-H-S. That's the scale of hardness that's used. They got them on Amazon, so there's no reason that you don't have one. The other way you can test is, this is a thermal conductivity tester. And it's got a probe right here. I saw your eyes light up when I said probe, Jim. Calm down. It's got a probe right here, and it has 2 little metal contacts. And so when you apply this to the blue layer, okay, that is the most important part. It has to be the blue layer in the Ellensburg Blue. It can't be a gray layer. It can't be a white layer. It can't be one of the inclusions, because that will change the readout. Okay. Very temperamental. But when you apply this to a blue layer after you've studied it under magnification and saw where the blue is, it'll measure, it'll apply heat to the stone, through one of the sensors, and then the other sensor will pick up the heat and it'll measure the amount of time it took the heat to travel that distance. And it's tiny, it's less than a millimeter or so. Okay, so agates and quartz all are supposed to be the same. They're all supposed to have the same level of thermal conductivity. And they all do, except the Ellensburg Blues. Ellensburg Blues have a slower rate of heat transfer, okay? And so you can test it, and an Ellensburg Blue is going to rate like a 1.5, whereas all the other agates and quartz are going to be like 3 or 4, okay? Now this readout doesn't have numbers, it actually just has samples of materials that read in that range. And on this one, the lowest is glass. It says that an Ellensburg Blue will read out as glass or just a little over glass. And then higher up, you've got quartz, amethyst, and citrine because they're all silicon dioxide like a regular agate. All agates should be reading up there, but Ellensburg Blues don't. Okay, if you use the tester properly and apply it to one of the blue layers. Okay, so like this stone here, this whole layer on top is blue, so it's going to test lower than quartz and everything on this machine. It has tested lower. So for methods of identifying hardness and, oh, let me talk about one more. So there is the one thing where everyone says if it turns pink, when a light goes through it, then it's an Ellensburg Blue, okay? Well, this one definitely turned a really cool color of kind of a lavender pink. Well, this one turns this color under the light that is on my cabochon machine. It's an older incandescent light bulb. So it turns a really good color. Now, if we take my LED light that I have over on the table and apply it to the same rock, it's going to look brilliantly blue. There won't be a shade of pink to it. So if you have a rock and they say, well, if it turns pink, then it's an Ellensburg Blue, and if you use the wrong light, it doesn't turn pink at all, does that mean it's not an Ellensburg Blue? It's still an Ellensburg Blue. So I actually had 2 more photos, and I must have lost them because I had one with the light that I have over there, so it's brilliant blue. And then we have this one with the incandescent bulb, and it's pink. And then I had a third photo of just natural lighting, and it, of course the Ellensburg Blue is also blue there too. So there's also blue agates that come from Mexico and blue agates that come from Africa and Montana, and a lot of those will turn pink when you put light through them. So everybody that insists that that's a way to identify them, maybe they want to defraud somebody, I don't know. But it's not a consistent test. So the hardness for someone to say that they have to be over 8 or 8.5 and that they have to turn pink, neither one of those tests is a good test to determine if it's an Ellensburg Blue. Okay? It does have to be at least 7 or higher, and it does have to be blue. Those are 2 things that are a fact. So they got to be blue to be an Ellensburg Blue, unless you got some purple ones. So to recap, if you've got it with the exterior matrix, it had to have been formed as a seam in rhyolite. It's got to have goethite. It's going to have some quartz or mogonite in it. Those are white. It's going to have inclusions in the agate itself. Now, Ellensburg Blues have a really distinct inclusion where they're almost holly-shaped. But you can't always find them, and you have to look at them with microscopy. You got to use a microscope to actually see these little holly-shaped inclusions. But they're the only agate that has those inclusions is the Ellensburg Blue. So matrix, the composition, the color, the inclusions, the thermal conductivity, or the XRF with an elevated level of zirconium, those are all things you can use to identify something as an Ellensburg Blue. If it's already been set into a ring or some type of jewelry, technically, if you were to bring it to the XRF and get it tested, you'll read high levels of silver, there'll be copper, whatever is in the metal, and somebody could conceivably have sprinkled some zirconium in the bezel before they set the stone in. Okay? So the actual proper way to do a zirconium XRF test is that the material has to be cleaned, and it has to be cleaned with alcohol before it's tested, and it can't be set in anything because it'll pick up the silver. And so that test is also difficult if you've bought the jewelry. Now people might say, oh, well, we can test it, and they can. It's just not going to be an accurate test because it's going to show you all the different metal that's in whatever it's set in, whether it's set in gold or if it's set in silver. If it's 925 silver, then it's only 92.5% silver, and then there's other metals. So the XRF test is properly done with a bare stone, a clean bare stone. So that's another method. And so it creates a difficulty when you go to buy, because people do sell fake. They sell real blue agates as fake Ellensburg Blues. And so then you're like, well, is it even worth it? Well, if you get it from a reputable source. Okay, I can tell you I'm a reputable source, and then it's just up to you whether or not you want to believe me. So, I mean, I am a reputable source, but I get either I find mine or I get it from the Carlson family. And so for me, if I was to buy it, I'd buy it from me. And there's several people here. Terry is here over here, and he mines it as well. And Matt Richards is over there, and he also mines it. We're claim partners. We own private claims for Ellensburg Blues, and so there are reliable people you can get them from. Don't buy them from Jim. Oh, I thought you were asleep.
No, I'm greedy. I grab them.
You keep them. Yeah, you don't sell them. So, so I know I'm not trying to fill you all with doom and gloom, but you just have to be careful, and especially if the stones, like there's a handful they want to sell you, and every one of them is the exact same color, is nice and clear, there's no inclusions, they match perfectly. The chances of those being real Ellensburg Blues is fairly slim because of the amount of inclusions. Even a clear Ellensburg Blue has inclusions, except, now there's always an exception. Botryoidal Ellensburg Blues, those are the ones with the bubbles on the top, when they formed so quickly that they kept the bubbles and they didn't form any inclusions in them. Okay, but most people won't cut the pots off of an Ellensburg Blue because they're worth more with the pots on them. So that's the one where you're kind of taking a chance if you're looking for inclusions, because there may not be any inclusions just because they form so quick. So trying to identify them can be a little difficult. If you can get the college to do it with a clean stone, then that's good. If you want to get a thermal conductivity tester and a microscope, that's also a good way to do it. Like I said, shade of blue doesn't help, pink doesn't help, and then of course hardness doesn't help. So,
Is zirconia unique to the Ellensburg Blues? Do you think the right one?
So the question was if zirconium was unique to the Ellensburg Blues, and at this point, from the agates that are in the database, yes, it is unique. Holly Blues, those nice purple agates from Sweet Home, Oregon, they have an elevated level of gold in them. Okay, they have more gold in them than other agates do. Whereas, as I said, the Ellensburg have a higher level of zirconium. And at this point, the database that's available with what's been tested of trusted stones, so the college has trusted stones because they tested the Carlson collection. Quite a few of them. I think it was 85, but there's probably been. So they are able to base their results on a known agate, whereas if Jim just went walking in with a blue agate and said, here, I got this Ellensburg Blue, first thing they're going to look at the guy, they might not even let him in the building. Okay. Second thing, they may not even believe him, because look at him. I don't believe him.
I don't believe myself.
Jim always picks on me, so that's why I'm picking on him. He's mean to me. Jim's a good guy. He's with Bedrock, you guys, and he's very knowledgeable on finding rocks and gold panning. So if you need any help from a little Irish leprechaun, he's right here. So, sorry, Jim.
It's okay, I give back.
I know, he gives back. So, the zirconium, like I said, is fairly distinctive at this point. They haven't found anything else. And usually when you get them tested at the college, they do give you a readout. And what the readout will say, it doesn't say, congratulations, you have an Ellensburg Blue. It says, the results of the study on this rock most closely match Ellensburg Blue. okay? Because they'll overlay the graph of the results on an Ellensburg Blues result, and you'll see that, yeah, that zirconium is there and the other materials as well. So I mean, there's that. I mean, so if you come to my table and you look at the jewelry and say, was this tested? And I pull out a test from Central Washington University and say, here's the results. Now, how do I prove that that's the results from the stone that's in the jewelry that I'm selling you? So it gets more complicated. So Terry's got a bunch of loose stones over at his table over here, and you can see what the beautiful free-form loose Ellensburg Blues. I've got some loose ones, but they're not on display. I've got the rough. Matt's got rough over on the corner as well, like I said. So you can look at Matt's, and you can look at mine and see the rough. You can look at Terry's and see the finished. And it helps a little bit to be familiar with them, but it doesn't help a lot if you want to know the chemical composition. So what I'm saying is be careful. So internet sources that are selling, 50-carat Ellensburg Blues for $13.95 plus $2 in shipping are probably lying to you. I've done a search for Ellensburg Blues on the internet, and I found a place in England that was selling these absolutely gorgeous Ellensburg Blues. They're all chunks about that size. They're all the same color. They're all perfect. They're selling them for £5 a piece, which is about $8 US. Well, how did this place in England get all these wonderful Ellensburg Blues? How come they're better quality than mine are? And how come they're only selling them for $8? Because they're probably blue chalcedony from Turkey or Africa or something like that, because they're selling fakes, but people will get on and search and look. So you just have to be real careful. It's just sad. So you have to either be really careful or you have to go out and find your own. Okay, so we go back to this picture right here. These are all Ellensburg Blues, and some people would take these and some people wouldn't. Okay, they don't have the blue showing. All right. For those that didn't see it earlier, this is the other side of these same stones. Okay, so now you can see the blue. I exposed the inner blue, but they were filthy on the outside. So the advice that I have, and I said this earlier, but I'm going to repeat it. When you go out, you need to familiarize yourself with what an agate looks like, what seam agate looks like. And you pick up the seam agate that you see on the ground, or you pick up quartz, or you pick up pieces of rhyolite, because all of those are associated with Ellensburg Blues. I have a rock over there that's been riding in my truck for 1.5 years, and I picked it up and kept it because on one side there's a little bit of chert. I didn't even see the blue that was on the other side. It was that dirty, and I threw it in the back of the truck, and it rode around back there, and I got cleaned by the rain, and I took it out of the truck here 1.5 weeks ago. I thought, oh, look at that, that's a nice blue. I'm embarrassed to say, because normally I catch them. But if you take the interesting rocks, don't worry about color now, worry about color after you get home, and you can clean them up or grind off the exterior and see if it's blue. Just get used to finding agate first, okay? Or like I said, rhyolite that has agate in it, or quartz that has agate attached to it. Get used to finding that, train your eye to see that, and then anybody can see blue. This is the other reason, anybody can see blue. This is why I'm telling you, don't look for blue. I mean, if you see something blue, take it. But don't go out there looking for blue, because there's a good chance somebody's already walked through the area that you're walking through, maybe me. And if I saw something blue, I already took it. So I guess the best way is all the easy stuff has been taken. Okay, so look for the hard stuff. Look for the stuff that's shaped like an agate, pick it up, and then figure out what it is and figure out color later. Okay, that makes sense to you guys? So, okay. So, now how many here go out and actively hunt for blues? No, you don't. Okay, so everybody kind of does. If you're walking down the shoulder of the road, you're looking, if you're in a rock shop, you're looking. If you're looking in the back of my truck, you better get away. So there's a few areas in the Ellensburg area. So, the Ellensburg Blues really, there's been videos that say they don't know where they came from. They might have come from Canada. They might have come from Skagit Valley. I mentioned this yesterday. My favorite one was that they were all from one area. They were in the bottom of this lake. The lake froze, and then a flood came through, floated the lake, because it was all frozen now, floated it hundreds of miles away, deposited it in the field north of Ellensburg, and then it melted. Okay, so you got all the blues down there that way. That's just a bunch of BS. So that's not what happened. The Ellensburg Blues formed in rhyolite formations within 6 miles of the town of Ellensburg. Okay, so they're in the area. So, and there are a few public places. Now, if you know somebody that's got a farmer's field off of Reeser Creek Road or something like that, okay, if you know somebody that has a farmer's field there, then you want to be their friend. But the one person that people in that area hate the most is an Ellensburg Blue rockhound, because everybody seems to want to trespass. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought this was public land. Oh, you mean on this side of the no trespassing signs or on the other side? So I've never even asked anybody. I did ask one person. I said, is it okay if I come up one evening, knock on your door, and talk to you guys about not looking for rocks on your property, but just seeing if you ever found any so that I can track them? And they said, that's fine, we appreciate you asking. I haven't done it yet because I'm afraid they're going to change their mind, you know. But, so, there's a few public areas, and any more, for years I never talked about any of the public areas because I didn't want them getting inundated. Well, it's too late, they've been inundated by people now. There's a public area off of Reeser Creek Road called Section 18. Somebody put it in Google Maps. So, yeah, you search in Google Maps and it'll bring you right to the access point. You got to walk through about a mile of easement on other people's property. So, but there are Ellensburg Blues there. Are there easy Ellensburg Blues there? No, there's no more easy ones. Sorry. You got to look for them, and there's really no digging either. And so you might get away with raking the surface a little bit, but you want to go out there. It's 650 acres that of DNR land that you can actually walk on, which is wonderful. That's a lot of land. It's a mile to walk to get out there. You got to go over barbed wire fence and over a creek as well. But once you get out there, there's a lot of material other than Ellensburg Blue. But if you look hard enough, you might find one. I've been told there's been Ellensburg Blues as big as this found out there. I didn't find those. The ones I found were smaller, much smaller. But they are out there, so that's one of the places that you can go and look. It is open to the public, and as of the last time I looked, the Department of Natural Resources didn't have any problem with going out there finding rocks. Okay. Another place that people have found them is along the John Wayne Interpretive Trail just north of Ellensburg. It's the old railroad tracks, and on the shoulders of that, Hungry Junction Road, that area there, they've been able to find them. So there's another place, and people have said they found them in the Yakima River, that they've made them as far down to the Yakima on the other side of Ellensburg. I've never found them there, so I honestly can't say if that's the case. Okay, but in the area of, like I said, Hungry Junction, they found them in the farmers' fields there. They found them on the John Wayne Trail, and then they found them in Section 18. 100%, I found them in those areas. So those are places that if you don't have any private land to get to and you want to look, then those are places to go to because they're absolutely worth it. So, hey, Carlos, guys, Carlos from Whitewater Gold Rush is here. Hey.
You're giving me a special tour if I come back?
Yes.
Miner, right?
Yes.
You heard it, folks? You heard it?
Yeah, but you got to let me take a YouTube video.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So Carlos is a agate miner at heart. Or is that an agate minor?
Agate minor.
Agate minor. So.
I love gems and love rocks because why? I get to keep those.
Yeah, he didn't get to keep the gold. So there's a couple areas. Other areas than that, I honestly don't know. I've been invited on to some private farms to go look, and I actually haven't gone. There's one farm I was invited on, wasn't able to go look, but I'm hoping to here sometime in the future, just to go look. and let them know, hey, look, that's an Ellensburg Blue. You've been stepping over it all this time. Or look, the gravel you made your driveway out of with the concrete loaded with blues. I'd love to tell somebody that. I don't need to keep them. I'd love to point them out to somebody. So if there's anything that you take from what I'm saying is, you have to be a little paranoid when someone's trying to sell you an Ellensburg Blue, or if you got a blue agate that someone wants to identify and they say isn't an Ellensburg Blue, but they want to take it off your hand. You know, you don't want to jump at that either. But do what you can. Don't trespass. Check out those public areas. Remember, don't look for the easy agates. Look for the hard ones to find, and look for anything shaped like an agate. I have a couple on the table that when I found them, they were completely brown stained and dirty. There was no blue showing at all. But because of their shape, I kept them. Now they're a beautiful blue because I soaked them in iron out and cleaned them. So the value of Ellensburg Blues is, some people say, higher than it should be, and I think sometimes it's lower than it should be. So they are rarer than people think because there are less than people think there are. There's a lot of gray agates that get sold as blue agates. Okay, they're gray. We've got some small pocket stones over here. They're actually $20 a piece, and that's half the price that they should be. And a couple of them, that's about a third the price they should be. But they're blue, and you can carry it in your pocket, and when you're out looking, you can take them out of your pocket and compare them. So if you've got a blue ring or two, you can compare the stones until your eye's trained. And then you can see, hey, this one's blue. But like I said too, carry a bucket or a bag, because just in case you're wrong, take it home with you and then clean it later. Andrew has taken agates home and pulled open his bag, and later, and he's like, oh look, that's an Ellensburg Blue. The one that was in the back of my truck for a year and a half, because I keep every agate I find. I have buckets full, and I took 4 milk crates full of agate out of the truck the other day, and one of them that I saw had that blue on it. I got it on the table if anyone wants to see my mistake, with a happy ending though, so I kept it. Okay, so I kind of jumped around a little bit, and I apologize. Maybe one day I'll be organized enough to have a PowerPoint instead of just pictures. But are there any questions that you have? Anybody have any questions? Don't even think of it, Jim. No?
When you go out digging, I tell people I don't know where your spot is. Leave 3 hours before sunup. So I can't follow you.
Yep. Yeah, Jim says he doesn't know where the spot is. I saw him hiding behind a tree once. So it was a rainbow going right to him. Sorry, Jim.
You caught me.
I got you on that one. So does anybody have any other questions? We will be at the booth, and if you think of anything later, if you want to look at the rough. Did you?
Red top mountain.
So the red top question, this is always a good one, and the answer to the red top question is kind of vague, okay, and I don't mean it to be vague. Andrew and I have found 5 blue agates at red top, okay, and they were seam agates, and one of them had distinctive rhyolite on the outside. So the requirements, rhyolite, goethite, quartz, or mogonite, inclusions that are holly shaped, 2 of them have all of those requirements, and they came from red top. They came out of the same hole. Andrew found a beautiful dark blue one, and I found a light blue one. They came out of the same hole. Now, I brought those into Carlson's Jewelers, and Carl will tell you a story about some character who came into his shop one day and kind of set him up and said, what do you think of these? Well, I guess I'm that character, because Carl looked at them under magnification and did thermal conductivity tests on them, and they tested as Ellensburg Blues. Now, when I say that the question is kind of up in the air a little bit, we haven't done a chemical analysis of them, so we can't say that it has a zirconium, but they did have rhyolite on them. So they should have the zirconium in them. But the other thing though, at red top, there's a lot of blue nodules that are found. Those are formed differently. Those are formed in gas bubbles and basalt, with water seeping down into it, carrying silicon dioxide, and then slowly building up over years. those will not test the same. They might be blue, but they will not test as an Ellensburg Blue. So, and there's some really pretty blue nodules that come up there. They are the right color, they're just the wrong chemical composition. 15 years ago, they would have been an Ellensburg Blue. Now, they're a pretty blue nodule. Any more questions? All right, everybody, I appreciate you coming over and sitting through this and not making me look lonely. So,
I got my questions.
which is the red top one, or?
Blue nodule.